is not necessarily a coherent sector of work or an economy of work, but really jobs that lie outside the protections of employment and labor laws, and that are deployed through and with companies that imagine themselves as technology companies or labor platform companies. That is work that is deployed via smartphone, and where the boss is the algorithm, where workers are not guaranteed minimum wage or workers' comp if they're injured.
Gig apps have transformed the way many people work and earn money. Platforms such as Uber and DoorDash have provided millions with opportunities for flexible employment, allowing them to work on their own schedules. But despite their popularity, many people remain skeptical about these apps due to issues related to transparency and worker treatment. Amazon will pay nearly $4 million to settle a DC lawsuit over taking delivery tips from drivers. The 2022 lawsuit filed by Attorney General Brian Schwab's office alleged that Amazon misled DC consumers by claiming that 100% of tips would go to Amazon Flex delivery drivers, when in fact, much of the money was used to reduce Amazon's labor costs and increase profits.
I have studied the trajectory of this economy starting approximately 2008. Taxi workers were, the first perhaps gig workers in the ride-hail industry. They were misclassified as independent contractors or properly classified depending on your sort of legal analysis in the late 1970s. So for much of the 20th century, taxi work was lower middle class, secure work. It was union work. Workers were guaranteed a wage at the end of the day. They had workers' comp, they had unemployment insurance. And in the late 70s, taxi companies all over the United States started to experiment with their business model. And instead of guaranteeing a wage or sharing commission, they said, well, if we wrote to the IRS and said, hey, if we start leasing our vehicles to taxi drivers, does that make them independent contractors? And the IRS said, sure. This ultimately led to the deunionization of the taxi world, and workers had a few sort of baseline regulations in place that kept their work from being uber precarious. So they had wage protections in the form of fare regulations by city. They had lease regulations. They had a cap on the number of drivers or vehicles that were on the road at any given time. All these things that were left over from the union days, from things that the union bargained for, and were able to eke out some semblance of a secure living. And then in 2013, my taxi comrades started telling me that there were these bandit tech cabs that were stealing their fares, pilfering their fares on the streets of San Francisco, jumping ahead of them in line at the Hyatt and the Marriott. And I thought, this is crazy. People are getting into cars with other people that they don't know, and they're just private. They're just not regulated vehicles. Like, this isn't going to last. This is dangerous. The city is going to end this, and far from ending it, the city, allowed it, and the state of California wrote regulations to facilitate the legalization of this business model, and it has since proliferated all over the world.
Many gig workers complain about opaque algorithms that determine pay. Unlike traditional employment where wages and benefits are clearly outlined, gig workers often find themselves at the mercy of an unpredictable pay structure. Apps frequently adjust pay models without prior notice, leaving workers confused and struggling to understand how much they'll earn. Amazon Flex has attracted thousands of drivers, drawn by the promise of flexible schedules and competitive earnings. In 2019, reports surfaced that Amazon was using customer tips to subsidize its guaranteed earnings for drivers rather than treating them as additional income. The backlash from both drivers and consumers was swift. Many customers felt deceived, believing their tips were going directly to drivers as a bonus rather than being absorbed into Amazon's pay structure. In response to public pressure and a wave of negative media coverage, Amazon announced in August 2019 that it would change its tipping policy to ensure that drivers receive 100% of their tips, in addition to their base pay. Despite this policy shift, some drivers remain skeptical about whether the new system is entirely transparent. Amazon Flex's tipping controversy highlights a larger issue within the gig economy. Several gig platforms have faced similar accusations about fair pay and deceptive practices.
There really is no such thing as the gig economy. Gig work, as we colloquially refer to it when we think of ride-hail work or food delivery work or Amazon Mechanical Turk work, does not occupy any single sector, but is perhaps more aptly framed as work that exists outside the boundaries of the law's protections, either because the workers themselves are misclassified by their employers, or perhaps in some cases rightfully classified as independent contractors in relationship to their hiring entity. The primary thing that has happened from 2015, 2016 to today is that wages have dropped dramatically. By the industry's own calculations, 90% of drivers don't stay for a full year. So the people that do stay are the people that are the most desperate, people who have made investments, capital investments in this work, people who don't have anywhere else to go. And those long-term full-time drivers, the ones that have gone driving 5 to 6 years, they will tell you that not only are they not free and not flexible in all the ways that the companies say that they are, but over the years they've had to learn the ways in which they're not free and flexible.
Another challenge is the physical and mental toll gig work can take. Delivery drivers and rideshare workers may spend long hours on the road, facing fatigue and traffic hazards. Freelance workers who rely on gig apps for income must constantly search for the next job. The gig model incentivizes workers to complete as many orders as possible within a short period, sometimes at the expense of quality and safety. Rideshare drivers may feel pressured to accept more rides to maximize earnings, potentially leading to compromised driving safety. Delivery drivers often receive low base pay and must rely on tips to make a living wage. They bear the cost of the vehicle maintenance, gas, and insurance, further reducing their earnings. Gig workers also struggle with deactivation policies that many consider unfair. Many platforms have faced lawsuits over worker misclassification, wage theft, and unfair labor practices. Despite these issues, gig apps continue to thrive due to their convenience and the growing demand for flexible work. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, you can help us grow the community by subscribing to World of Finance TV and turning on the notification.